Welcome back, folks. So before the break, I was talking about how most people's lives are based around acquisition. Ownership of something, ownership of land, ownership of possessions, ownership of other people. When in fact the reality is that no ownership is everlasting, because you can't take anything with you once you've finished in this place. And ownership and acquisition throughout this life simply distracts you from life itself. The need to acquire more and more things leads to conflict, leads to jealousy, leads to social hierarchy. It leads to all sorts of things, very few of which are spiritually sound or even necessary for one to live a fulfilled life. And the reason most people seek to acquire these things all throughout their life is because they have an unrealistic perception of what fulfillment in life is. And again, this comes from our system. It comes from a left brain education. It comes from the fact that most people are taught throughout school, throughout their entire life, that the meaning of life is the one with the most wins. But as we have discussed on this show many times, life is not actually about that. And in fact, pursuing that type of attitude in life simply creates division within society. It supports social hierarchy. It supports class division. It drives ego and causes one to view other human beings with judgment and very often disdain, simply because one may own more stuff than them. And it is stuff that has usually been acquired through the exploitation of other people. And it's always exploitation, folks, because, as I've often discussed, the money system itself is designed to keep people in shortage. There's never enough money to go around. And so the more stuff and the more money one acquires for themselves, the less somebody else has got, and so another person is thrown on the trash heap. You see, this is the way our system works, folks, and that's why a constant preoccupation with acquisition is probably one of the worst things you can do for society in general. Ultimately, it's one of the worst things you can do for yourself as well, because all it does is lead you away from who you are, because life is not about stuff. Life is about life. Life is about finding yourself and finding your true path, finding your dharma. Life is about being yourself to your fullest potential and allowing others and helping others to do the same. It's not about dependence upon other people. It's not about control of other people. It's not about the expectations you may have of other people. It's not even about the expectations you may have of yourself. It's simply about discovery. And as soon as people discover that we are each other and they start treating each other as each other, then the whole world changes. Life is very much, on one hand, the way Bill Hicks said, like a roller coaster ride, and we make of it that which we will. And on the other hand, it's like one endless classroom where we learn about ourselves, we learn about our higher emotions, and we learn about how we affect reality around us by what we think, how we feel, how we act, and how we treat other people. Essentially, how we treat the creation. And ultimately, a good life is a life where a person has learned how to serve the creation for the Creator. Serve the creation in every aspect of the creation. Because if society was to do that, then every person within society would live in a constant state of abundance. Abundance is not something that it would be hard for society as a whole to achieve. And all that would be required to do so would be for the people within society to simply adjust their mindset to one of service to the creation. If they did that, the whole thing would change virtually instantly. Suddenly there would not be any problems. It's just that people have this misconception of service as well. They think of service and they think of slavery. They view service as non-voluntary, unpaid work. So they have a complete misconception of what the word actually means anyway, and they have a misconception of what reality is. And again, they have this misconception simply because of the society we live in and what people are trained to think. So you can't blame them for it, folks. Most people are simply asleep because they've been trained to be that way. And it's often very, very difficult to wake people up to these things. The best way to do it is to lead by example. Because if you put yourself in a state of service to the creation, then you will find that your life will change. You'll find that you will suddenly become a pleasure to be around. People will want to spend more time with you, and things will just simply unfold. Life itself will just unfold for you. You'll start noticing the synchronicity in your life, and life will very often lead you to some very wonderful places that you never dreamed would even ever be part of your life. It truly is amazing how things just fall together when one operates in a state of service. You'll also find that you're much happier in a state of service because the people around you are happier. And you actually gain a lot through service to others. Because the more you give to someone, the more you give to the creation around you, the more fulfilled and complete you feel inside, and the more the creation around you and the people within it will give to you. So you find yourself in a constant state of abundance simply because you live in a constant state of service. And I'm living proof that it works, folks, because it absolutely works for me. I mean, I may not have a lot or own a lot, but I always live in a state of abundance simply because I'm never in a state of need. People around me won't allow me to be in a state of need because I would never allow them to be in a state of need. It all evens out, folks, and I don't need to own a lot of stuff. I don't need a lot of stuff because life is not about stuff. Life is about life, and the stuff that you acquire and gather to you through life very often just ties you down, keeps you locked in one spot, and you have to constantly work to maintain the standard of your stuff. Get bigger houses to put your stuff in because you have more stuff, you need a bigger house. It's just ridiculous, and very often people are so preoccupied with their stuff that they miss out on everything around them. They spend their lives maintaining it, only to find that along the way they missed out on themselves. So it's this constant need for stuff, this constant need for ownership and acquisition that creates many of the problems that we see in our society. It puts people in situations where they would go and carry out something like fracking, simply to get more money, to gain more stuff, to gain more social status, or to hoard more paper for themselves, because they believe that in times of crisis, lots of paper will get them through, even though in such times the paper is very likely to have lost all its value and will be useless to them anyway. Because that's the way fiat currency works, folks. Paper money has no intrinsic value. Makes a good fire, but that's about it. And even a fire made from paper may be very dramatic, but it's a very short-lived experience. So it's not even really that good for that. It truly is amazing, folks, when you look at our society and you see the value that people put on this stuff when it's just paper. But people value paper and they value digital credits in their account. Even though if the bank was to close one day or the computer system was to crash, all of those digital credits would disappear into cyberspace and never be known of again. And yet all around them is life and abundance and people just like them, people with the same wants, needs, desires, people with the same need for love and companionship and compassion and empathy. People just like them, all of who have a massive amount of potential. And the potential that the human race holds if it were to unite as one species and view each other on common ground is quite amazing, folks. And it would be so good to see humanity do this, simply unite with each other, to realize that all we have to do is start treating each other as ourselves. That's the key to the whole thing. And I know that I've talked about this a lot, folks. I've said on so many radio shows that the key to everything is to treat others as yourself, to follow the one law and to serve the creation. And people may be getting sick of hearing me say that, but I say it so often because it truly is the answer, folks. That is the answer to all the problems that we face. It's just that it's so simple that people can't see it, because people can't get their head away from this money thing. They can't get their head away from money, acquisition, and ownership. They can't bring themselves to give to another person because they cannot see any monetary or material gain from helping others. They can't see how helping others will help them with their acquisition of more stuff, because that's what they perceive life to be about. It's truly very sad, because people who feel that way spend their whole lives in the acquisition of stuff, and they don't realize until the very end of their lives that it's just stuff, and how different their life would have been if they'd lived in a state of service and actually got to know the people and the creation around them during their lives.